Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben and with me is...
Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy. Oof. And that's because we watched Pride and Prejudice, the 2005 film.
By Joe Wright, which was a Jim pick. So why don't I give us a synopsis? Now, it's a bit unusual for us to hit something like this, but this was definitely my pick. So I'll give us a synopsis and then we'll do some facts. So here we go. Pride and Prejudice follows the spirited Elizabeth Bennet as she navigates family pressures, social expectations, and her growing dislike of the wealthy but aloof Mr. Darcy, as misunderstandings, pride, and prejudice cloud their judgment. Both are forced to confront their flaws and discover that first impressions can be deeply misleading. Set in Regency England in the English countryside, it's a witty and romantic story about love, class, and learning to see others and yourself more clearly.
Yep, so here's the facts. Released in 2005, directed by Joe Wright. Screenplay by Deborah Mogach. Adapted from the novel of the same name by Jane Austen. Cinematographer is Roman Ozin. Music by Dario Marinelli. Starring Keira Knightley, Matthew McFadden, Brenda Blythen, Donald Sutherland, Rosamund Pike, Jean Malone, Tom Hollander, Penelope Wilton, and Judi Dench. A runtime of 127 minutes. A modest budget of $28 million. With a domestic box office of $38 million, an international of $81 million, for a total of $378,283 million. As previously stated, this was a Jim pick and traditionally outside of both of our wheelhouses. Now, you had obviously seen this before based on your previous comments. This was my first time watching, and I will say that's because I have avoided this film. It's not like I just hadn't thought about it. This is not my style of movie. I am very locked into genre. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just my taste in film. But I also do think I pride myself on being able to notice a good film, even if that film is not for me. And this is a good film that is not for me.
I suppose for me, I really like this movie, and it's interesting because if you look at genre, typically it's not really my genre either.
No.
But I suppose I do have a bit of a soft spot for, I guess, what you'd call the visual style of a particular kind of auteur filmmaker. And so for me, I actually really like this movie largely because of the way it is directed and the way it is handled. So there's definitely a version of this, and I guess you can sort of see it in maybe the 1990s BBC version, where you're telling the same story, but you're doing it in a far more, I guess, conventional sort of style in terms of the visual flair of the film and even just the way it's directed and the performances and whatnot. So if you're a true fan of the story, the style doesn't matter as much. But for me, I actually think that the way that this film is done works for people who just love this story, and it also works for people who are maybe not as one-to-one into the story, but they can appreciate this version of it. So I would actually say, though, that interestingly, I'd call this movie a bit of an entry point to this story for me. Like, I wasn't interested in the story of Pride and Prejudice until I saw this film adaptation of it, which I really liked. And now I quite like the story of Pride and Prejudice, and I've read the novel, and it's actually something that I think this is actually a really good story that I would not have ordinarily discovered. And I only discovered it because of, like I said, the visual hooks of this particular film. So it's kind of an interesting way to kind of get to an appreciation of the work,
Yeah, so let's start with story first, because I think I'm least qualified to talk on the story. People have read and analyzed and broken down these characters and this story for generations now. This is a beloved story that people really do enjoy kind of investing time in. whether it is academically or just for the love of the story. And it is a romantic or a romanticized story. This story and stories like it, especially those written by Austen, invest heavily in its characters. Its characters are the ones telling the story, if you will, right? They are the driving force more than a lot of genres of film. And Keira Knightley's character of Lizzie, or Elizabeth Bennet, is this kind of, it feels cliche now, but not because it feels cliche now because it's been copied, right? Like, this was not the original, but one of the first batch of originals of these strong female characters that had this personality in this setting. And movies have aped it and copied it and followed it all the way through.
So are you talking this film adaptation, or are you saying this story,
I'm talking about the character in the story. Like,
right.
This film adaptation obviously plays that up quite well with Keira Knightley as well. Her and her father are my two most liked characters in this film. I think it's because I find them the most interesting without finding them annoying. If that makes sense. There are a lot of characters in this film that are deliberately annoying to the extreme to kind of show and balance out Elizabeth's kind of balanced but flawed nature, right? So the story, I have trouble with it because it starts slow, but that is not the story's fault. That is an aspect of the genre. It's building the world, it's building the characters, it's introducing you to people, right? And it only really kicks off at the halfway point for me. The first half of this film I didn't really enjoy. I kind of found it boring. The second half of the film is good. It's interesting, and I found it much more enjoyable as the central conflict of the film, which is the misunderstandings and the building kind of relationship between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth and her sisters and their respective partners, kind of build up into the problems or the solves that you get. I'm rambling a bit because I find it hard to put into words why I'm not an enjoyer of this film or this story type, but this is a very good film. Like, it's a conundrum for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you sort of talk about structure, because that is something where if you have seen the film more than once, that first half of the story actually becomes much more enjoyable. It's difficult on the first viewing to actually know where it's going necessarily. Obviously, particularly if you don't know anything about the story, but most people have even heard, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy.
I knew the two characters for sure, yeah.
You know that something's happening there. But if you really are unfamiliar with the story, then that first half probably does feel a little bit, and I'm saying probably because it's been a while since I was a new viewer to the story, but probably does feel a little bit like, who are all these characters? Why are we introducing them? Or what do we need? Like, let's go. And interestingly, the film streamlines it substantially from the novel even, I would sort of say that the visual contrast and the visual style really does a lot of great work to keep that momentum up in the first half of the movie. Like the one shot through the Netherfield ball, there's actually multiple one shots in that sequence where they drift through the ball without cutting and introduce. And I love all that stuff. I think that's great, and that really helps to sell the scene and get going. That sequence actually of the Netherfield ball. So in the film, that's actually the second social ball. I really love that scene because that scene does so much work from an adaptation point of view, actually compacting several events from the book into one sequence where we can sort of see it all. And the idea that the camera will drift through the space and not cut, we see, Kitty and Lydia being, insecure girls causing a ruckus. We see Mrs. Bennet, being embarrassing in this social situation. We see this beautiful moment between Mr. Bennet and Mary, where he functionally kicks her off the piano because she's embarrassing herself. And then he actually is consoling her in a corner of the room. She's talking about how much she practiced that piece and it just didn't go well. Like, And this stuff is captured in a way that, like I said, is just wonderful to watch camera wise as we drift through this ball without cutting, but it also compacts and reorganizes a lot of events from the book into kind of one sequence, and obviously that's not even the main point of the Netherfield Ball. It's really about Elizabeth and Darcy and their dance, which is like a huge moment where everyone else seems to sort of fade away and it's just the two of them in the room. So just lots of great visual stuff and character stuff that is intertwined and inseparable, really. And there's a lot of moments in the first half of the film that are like that. So I'm not really disagreeing with you. I'm just sort of saying, I get what you're saying. And I'm going, well, on repeat viewing, and as someone who loves, certain aspects of auteur cinema, there's a lot, even in that first half, to keep me interested and to keep me invested in the story.
And I can build upon that because I actually believe you, right? And I believe you because I didn't like the characters yet, so I wasn't invested in what was happening, right? Whereas towards the end of the film, once you've consumed the story, you kind of like the characters more. You've lived in their shoe. So I can imagine upon a rewatch, you're more invested in watching those moments. You're more invested in watching that flow. Like, I didn't like Mr. Darcy until like the last third of this film. And I think that's a little bit on purpose and a little bit not. But like, I didn't care to watch any of them very much because I wasn't invested in their story yet. And I think that's just a thing of this genre, right? This genre is it's slowly hooking you in and letting you find characters you like. Like I've watched things like Downton Abbey and Bridgerton from time to time, and you see the investment that people have in their characters, which is what is, I think, typical of this genre. Like people pick favorites, people pick people they like in the story and they connect to. I didn't have that until about halfway through the film. So the rewatch thing makes a lot of sense to me. And I want to point out another thing. Another reason I don't like this movie is I don't enjoy this movie, is completely my fault. And my brain is conditioned for faster films. And there are certain slow films that I like and enjoy, but they're kind of grandfathered in a way, right? Like they're kind of in because I watched them a long time ago, or they're like something else I watch. And I can enjoy the slowness, I can live within it. Whereas I found it much harder to live within the slowness of the start of this film. And again, that's a me thing. That's me not having the muscles of watching film that I think I should have in certain circumstances.
Yeah, interesting. So, again, yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't find it slow, but again, I'm much more invested.
Slow is the wrong term. Slow kind of connotates a negative. It's a deliberate pace. And there are things happening. They're just not the things that my brain is clicking into from the start. As you said, a rewatch, they would probably click into a lot more because I'm like, oh, that's connects to this, or this ends up like this, and I know how it goes. And you can see the growth or the change and things like that. I think it's a me thing, not a film thing.
Yeah, nice. There's also some interesting stuff. This adaptation in particular, the 2005 version, I know, from my reading and research since my first watch, which was many years ago now, but that this is somewhat controversial in terms of its portrayal of several aspects of particularly the Bennets amongst fans of the book. I will sort of be quite a defender of this version because I think it does really good work. Like, for instance, basically the Bennets being where they are in this film, very much a working country landed gentry, but only just landed gentry, like to the point where you can see the pigs, you can see the mud, you can see their house is sort of in chaos. This is not this is far more than what is shown to us in the book. Like the disparity, the contrast between the Bennets and the Darcys. It's not necessarily that they're poorer, but they're definitely seen like they're definitely poorer than Darcy. But
Yeah.
it just in terms of their status, they are really far more almost. I don't use this term disparagingly, but this is what the film wants you to think. They're country bumpkins and they're lower class compared to
class is the key word, right? Like this.
Yeah, exactly. Like compared to your Bingleys and your Darcys. Now, the film is doing that as a shorthand for us, the viewer, to quickly get the difference between these various families. And I think it's a great shorthand. I have no problem with it as well. Like, it also helps to reinforce Elizabeth's love of nature as well, with the house being this sort of beautiful chaos. So while again, yes, it's controversial because it's people like, oh, the hang on, the Bennets aren't, they're not that poor, they're not that unsophisticated. That's not the book. And I'm like, I get that, but I think visually it's interesting to look at this contrast, and then I think B, it just does so much work visually for us that we don't have to explain to get that these two walks of life are completely different.
And I think that's important what you touched on there visually. The visual language of this film is spectacular. Like, this film does a lot with costume, with set design, with shot choice. Like, you're talking about explaining the differences between, the Bennets and everybody else. And the Bennets are dressed nice, but not as nice. Their home is big, but has the chaos you're talking about. The work of the land is close to the home. Like, it's in the home, it's around the home. And it also, even in the hair, right? The day-to-day look of the Bennett girls is nice, but there's the odd flyaway, there's as if they're moving, they're living creatures. Whereas you then compare that to Darcy's world, where everything is tight and manicured and tucked in and kind of perfectly, cheeks are done nicely and all that sort of stuff. And inside is sparse and not lived in. It's a beautiful way to describe and show things without saying things. And in a book, you have time. You have all the time in the world to show the little things that are the difference without being as heavy-handed. And heavy-handed's not fair, but it's kind of what we're talking about. But the movie doesn't have the time. And I was reading about the creation of this, and when it was first announced, there were a lot of people who were scared about how could it tell the story. The mini-series was so beloved. And the book was so beloved. It's like, how could you tell the story? And you're right, there are clever tricks. Like, I think the swing is one of the most obvious ones, right? Like, the swing helps us visually pass time. You see it kind of monotonous, like she's biding time as the world moves around her, or she's not moving as the world moves around her. It is a visually very, very good film, and it surprised me to see that this was his first feature, Joe Wright. He'd done music videos and he wasn't inexperienced at all, but obviously he has a love for this genre too, based on the films that have come after it. And I think the love and the attention to detail and the knowledge of what he has created shines through visually and very creatively.
Yeah, he's got so many moments in this movie where he's able to create intimacy between the characters and the audience through a combination of performance and visuals. You've mentioned one, which is the swing, which is a really beautiful moment. There's also two others that really stand out to me. There's an early scene with Elizabeth and Jane, and again, they sleep in the same bed because it's another visual shorthand to say that, look, they have some money, but they don't have, the same kind of levels. But as sisters, they sleep in the same bed, and they have this moment where they're under the bed sheet talking to each other in a kind of conspiratorial sort of way as they're discussing their days and that sort of thing. It's a really beautiful scene because you put a white bed sheet up and then shine light through it, and you get diffused light on these performers. And then also it just creates this intimacy, like you're almost in a cubby with the two of them in the bed as they discuss, their life, their loves, their days. And it's a beautiful combination of performance and visual style in order to create intimacy between the characters and the camera.
It also showed to me, it made me think of innocence and childhood, right? Like it's something children would do, and they hadn't lost that between them as sisters, and they would only do this with each other as sisters. They wouldn't be wider. They are adults or close to adults in this story. So it was a really nice kind of touch to show kind of they're not separated from that. They're still in that kind of a little bit of innocence at that stage, and not in a bad way, just kind of just happily innocent, like that kind of conspiratorial, gossipy, like, oh my god, did you see that boy? Did you see that boy? Like it's a nice thing.
Well, particularly in this world, in this story, the threshold there from childhood to adulthood is marriage, right? That's and that's what this entire movie is about. It's about crossing that threshold from childhood to marriage. So, and obviously as the girls then variously pair off, like this is all also really lovely in that it's one of the last moments, where they're going to have this kind of contact and communication with each other in this, as you say, innocent sort of childlike way, because it's a story about them all pairing off and basically heading off into the adult world as married women. The other moment that I really like, and it's maybe more obvious, is there's a sequence where we're outside the Bennett's house at nighttime, and we actually drift from window to window with the camera and see all of these little vignettes of the house. It's the servant going up the stairs singing a song. It's Mr. and Mrs. Bennet discussing the girls, in their bedroom. It's moving to Kitty and Lydia. Like it's this lovely sort of, the camera just drifts around the exterior of the house, looking in at them as we see them all sort of unwind towards the end of the day. And again, a beautiful way to create, a visual moment that is also giving us an intimate look at this functioning household. And all of these things are doing what you said, which is they're bringing us in and helping us to find these characters, enjoy these characters, make friends, if you like, with these characters in the first half of the movie. So now I should say, look, there's some people who might click on this and be like, boys, Pride and Prejudice, you have just done 22 minutes and you haven't talked about Elizabeth and Darcy, which is the whole point of the movie. So what are your thoughts on the central romance
I
here?
was about to bring this up as well. Now, this is one of the romances in fiction. This is, people literally say, oh my god, he's a Mr. Darcy. Like that's in vernacular. And I knew what it meant, but I didn't have context for what it meant. The character of Darcy, at least to begin with, is frustrating. And I only got on board with him when I thought, oh, they didn't know about the spectrum back then. And I think Mr. Darcy may be slightly on the spectrum. And just in a way of like emotional output, right? Just in a way of reading a room. The character does not read situations or the room well. And at the start, that is a negative, and at the end, that turns into a charm, right? It turns into a charm because you realize underneath him, he is considerate, he does care, and he is very generous. He just doesn't know how to present that in a way that is outside his class and station. And then you've got Elizabeth Bennet, who is this kind of much more open human, much more emotional, much better at reading the room, much better at reading people. And her frustration with him is she sees that attitude as arrogance and as kind of an aloofness and as in he thinks he's so much better than us. And he kind of does and doesn't think he's better than everybody else. He thinks he's better than everybody else because the world tells him he is. But he also looks down and sees the world as almost his responsibility, right? There are times in this movie where he fixes a situation because he knows he's the person who can. And that's kind of an admirable human trait, but it also seems to separate him from the emotion and more of the responsibility. But as I said, as the movie moves on, you see his dilemma. You see him fighting from within. You see him going, this doesn't make sense. I should marry within my station, but this woman is the perfect antithesis of me. And then you see her do the same thing. You see her go, he's a bore, he's horrible, he's whatever. But you then see her see the bits in the moments of generosity and kindness and honor. And you see that kind of opposite reflected as they're drawn together. It is beautiful in its own way. It is two halves completing a whole person in a strange way. Like, she has parts of what's needed, he has parts of what's needed, and together they form the whole of a singular kind of being. That's the way I kind of read it, right? That's the way I kind of looked at it. And the problem is, not the problem, I also realized I've seen it before because of this story. This story is kind of a bit like Shakespeare, right? People redo Hamlet, people redo these things, but they don't call it Hamlet, or they don't call it Pride and Prejudice, but it's effectively the same story retold through a different lens. They adopt the story. And I realized I've seen this multiple times in TV, in movies, the retelling of this story without the name Elizabeth Bennet, without the name of Mr. Darcy, without the name of Pride and Prejudice, but it is this story almost listed whole cloth. It is that relationship lifted whole cloth. And I liked their ending. I liked the kind of the frantic nature of it all, the kind of everything coming together quickly because they've both realized what they've realized and like what's there to change, right? So I don't know. I rambled a bit. I kind of put it into there. I like their relationship. After the first half of the movie.
It's interesting because I feel like I can put some of that into context knowing more about the story. Now, the film, I think this was a wise choice ultimately, and I absolutely understand why they did it, but the film is locked to Elizabeth's perspective.
Yes.
So the book is not. The book is quite interesting in the fact that it begins with a very wide perspective, sort of shifting third where style of writing where Lizzie is just one of the characters. We're learning about all of them almost equally. It's not even clear from the opening chapters that Lizzie is going to be the main character, if you like. The film has no such ambiguity about it. This is from start to finish. This is Lizzie's story. And it kind of has to be. They just don't have the time to actually sort of drift around. And I think it probably would have really unfocused a film version if we didn't do that. Maybe a bit different in a TV series where you have a bit more time. But so I think it was the right call to do that and to lock into Lizzie's perspective. But it does basically force a certain portrayal of Darcy, and it makes that a very challenging character to actually perform for Matthew McFadyen. He has limited screen time, really, in the first half of the movie. So, and his idea of, okay, well, we don't have a good sense of where the coldness is coming from. We don't have a good sense of where the aloofness is coming from. We just see that the few times that we see him, he is cold and aloof, which forces the audience to read into that as you've done, and sort of say, well, why is that? And the film, again, as it goes on, you get a bit of an idea, particularly towards the end, that like, oh man, to be this guy, he is constantly having people who want his money, like constantly. Like it's just like
even just whatever his status, like being known as
Yeah.
someone who knows Mr. Darcy. Like,
Exactly. So it's sort of like, we've got people from Wickham, who's after his money. We've got, even Carolyn Bingley. Like, there's an implication that like she's after him in terms of like he's a good match for her. There's a variety of people due to his class status, due to his money, who just want a piece of him. Who just want, and being constantly on guard because he's like, what aspect of my wealth or status does this person want of me, right? Kind of explains a lot, really, if you look at how he views the whole world. Like, it's exhausting to be constantly on guard in that way. And then obviously Lizzie, being from a family that is so much, I guess, poorer than his own, like that would be the ultimate red flag, particularly when you look at Lizzie's mother, right? Who is shamelessly attempting to get her daughters to marry up, if you like, so Lizzie's got a lot of, and not that she's trying to do this work, which is the whole charm of the story, but like in order for that match to even work, Lizzie has so much that she has to overcome in terms of Darcy's established and I would say pretty fair views of the situation at the outset. Like, there's a big hill to climb there to say that she doesn't actually care about money. Like, that's a huge deal for him to realize, oh, this is a person who doesn't care. Like, I happen to have money, but that is not something that factors into what she thinks about me. She actually thinks she doesn't think much of me, and that's unusual to start with. Is that she doesn't think much of him. And that's actually the thing that kind of almost starts him off a little bit on like, oh, what do you mean this? She's not trying to get my attention,
and
it's just fascinating to me that is his dynamic, and that explains so much about him. But we don't have time to do all of that in the movie. You don't really get to that until the very end of the film, which again, the rewatch thing really becomes something quite different.
can I ask you a question? Do you think if people haven't consumed this story before, do you think it matters at all first? But do you think they should read the book, watch the movie, or watch the movie, read the book?
I think watch the. This is weird, but I'm going to say
it's because I could sense the answer here.
It's actually watch the movie twice.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
and then read the book. Do you know what I mean? Because it's watch the movie once if you have no idea, right? And you'll have probably a similar experience to what you just had.
Yeah.
And then if you watch the movie again, you actually get a whole different experience because you know what's going on from the jump, and that first half becomes so much more enjoyable. You can read so much more into every interaction and what's going on. And then once you've sort of done that, then go read the book. And then what the book really does is it gives you an even fuller picture than you get from the two watchings of the film. So, and look, that probably what I just said sounds like homework to a lot of people. What, I got to watch the movie twice and then read the novel? But the point is, by the time you get to that, you should actually enjoy this story and want to spend more time with these characters to reveal more of what's going on. So
I also want to take a quick minute we've mentioned one of these characters, but we haven't really talked about them a lot. And I want to talk about them because I enjoyed them so much. That is first Donald Sutherland's portrayal of Mr. Bennet. That dude's a real G. Like, he has flaws, and you can see those flaws, but he cares so much about his daughters, beyond marrying them off, beyond doing all those things. And that's not common in a world like this, in a time like this. He could have been presented as this kind of very separate man of the house kind of figure in this story, and I'm guessing it's the same in the book, but he is a man who has his pursuits, obviously, but cares very deeply about his daughters and seems to even have such a soft spot for Elizabeth. Like almost a kindred type spirit, right? There's a moment in this where the mum's trying to marry her off and trying to pair her up, and she's like, I never will, I never will. And the mum brings the dad into it, expecting him to put the foot down. He's like, I mean, she can go with him, but I won't speak to her ever again. Like, kind of using his authority in a reverse manner. And I think that's a really nice moment and shows kind of a world where it would be a lot easier if his daughters were married off for him. A lot easier. But he doesn't want that necessarily for all of them the way the world wants it. And the second character, I forget her name, Judi Dench.
Oh, yes. Aunt. Oh, dear. Let's see.
Aunt, what is it?
Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Lady Catherine. She plays like the ultimate authority in this film. And she is 100% unlikable, which for Judi Dench is an effort. Like, I love Judi Dench. Judi Dench is one of those actors and actresses of a generation. She's brilliant, and she can play kind of acerbic and surly, but you still like her. But in this film, not at all. And that's deliberate, and that's on purpose. She is this kind of iron fist of authority. You shall not taint my nephew. She has her hands in all the pies, and she has sycophantic followers in The Cousin and all this sort of stuff. And I thought she was brilliant. She was formidable. And I really enjoyed her role as this character, who I assume is meant to be 100% like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like what you said about the Bennets, as in Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. I think that when you really think about the situation and when you think beyond the events of the film, both of them become incredibly sympathetic, in the sense that, and interestingly, Mr. Bennet, particularly in the film version, is very much, as you said, like, oh, he's a boss. You know what I mean? He's this really good guy, and he is. But he's also actually, and this is glossed over very much in the film, but he's actually had a lot of failure in his life, and it's not clear why. Because really he's ended up with his family in an incredibly tenuous situation that really he had a lifetime to fix. And it's unclear if he didn't try to fix it, or if he tried to fix it and just failed. Now, when I say fix it, it's obviously the fact that he has all daughters, right? And the family home is not going to stay in the family. And basically, if they don't have good matches in marriage, they're all going to lose the house and they'll have nowhere to live, once he dies, that is. So he had some ability throughout his whole life to try and fix that situation through good business deals, through, alteration of, their situation. And it's unclear if he didn't try, or if it's unclear if he tried and failed. But either way, he is somewhat responsible for the situation that they find themselves in, which also then feeds into Mrs. Bennet. Now, Mrs. Bennet is insufferable, yes, okay, but also she's just scared that they're going to lose the house, right? So she's looking to do whatever she can to actually protect not only herself, like that would be purely selfish, but the family, right? And the place where they live. So much as she drives me crazy, I do understand her motivations are actually coming from largely a good place as well. And the film is very much flattens that, Mr. Bennet, good, Mrs. Bennet, annoying and bad. But really, they're both there, and they both have a lot of sympathy that can sort of be offered. And I want to just mention one other thing, because it particularly relates to Mr. Bennet. This film, and I'm not sure what version you watched, but there are actually two versions of the ending of this film.
Apparently, I watched the second one.
The one that's on iTunes, at least in Australia, I mean, do we even call it iTunes anymore? I don't know. The iTunes store, the one you can buy, right, on Apple, is actually the American version. It's a very small thing, but it is important because I prefer the original British ending, right? So the original ending of the film is Darcy and Elizabeth have their moment, in the field, and then they go to talk to Mr. Bennet. And after Darcy talks to Mr. Bennet, Lizzie talks to Mr. Bennet, and she gets his sort of blessing, and then she leaves the room, and it just holds on him as he sort of realizes what's just happened, and he's sort of having this moment to himself in his office, and then it cuts and it's credits. That is the end of the film for me. But there is an additional scene, which is Elizabeth and Darcy sort of at their house at a later date, having a moment with each other. It's not a bad scene, but it's a scene that I just don't think is as strong to end the movie as, Mr. Bennet in his office. I just think that's a stronger film.
I saw the first version. So the ends in the office.
Oh, good. Okay, so that's the.
Yeah,
I say good because that's the version I prefer, right? The other version, again, it was, I believe it was sort of shot for more of an American audience, and an audience that really wanted to see a final scene of closure between Elizabeth and Darcy, which I get. I just don't think that ending is as strong. It's a very romantic scene, whereas the first scene of Mr. Bennet in his office is more sort of ending the film on the social commentary aspect, which I think is stronger, personally. So,
and considering that the whole film is almost about not showing the love, right? It's about kind of a restrained version of it. That ending does feel a bit misplaced, the one you just described. So I'm glad I saw the version that I saw. Speaking of endings, though, that brings us pretty much to our time and the end of our podcast. Do you have anything else you want to say on the film before we move on to where you can find us and our next film?
No, I'm happy. I'm happy to move.
I'll end by saying again, not my genre. I probably won't rewatch it, but it is a very well made, very well acted, and produced film. Like, it is a good movie. I'm sure it is.
For my next film, I'm just going to choose it again, and then we have to watch it again. That's your second viewing.
Do the one with the zombies next. So if you want to see this next viewing, or if you want to see anything we've done previously, you can find us at Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures on YouTube. You can, once you're on YouTube, go through our catalog, have a look at everything we've watched. This is not the normal film we watch, so you might find other films that you're not expecting us to see as well. Or if you haven't seen a film in that list of years of films that we've watched at this point, suggest one in the comments. Let us know what you want us to watch. Let us know what you think of the Bennets. Let us know what you think of Wickham. We didn't even speak of him, but he's not cool. If you want to listen to us, you can listen to us on Spotify and iTunes as well under Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. You can find us on the socials at Jim_and_Ben on Instagram and Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures on TikTok. Now, when choosing the movie to follow up Pride and Prejudice, I thought, let's try and go opposites here, right? Let's go new. Let's go futuristic in its setting. Let's go not live action, not realism. Let's go cartoon and hyper-realism. Let's go something with music. Let's go something that's bombastic. Let's go something that is so popular that parents around the world have begged never to watch it again. We are going to watch K-pop Demon Hunters. Yes, we are! This is how I felt last week.
Oh, man.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, even better. There's no secret endings. There's no weird relationships. Oh, there are weird relationships, actually. You're going to love it, man.
Well, we'll see. So, all right. That's what we're doing next week. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great one, and I hope you find your true love out.